GLP-1s aren't cheating, but they're not a complete strategy on their own either. And if nobody's explained why, that's the problem. Let's get into it. First, credit where it's due. The results are real. Let's give GLP-1s credit where it's due first. We see between 15 and 20% total weight loss on these drugs. Semaglutide trials showed a 14.9% average weight loss, and tirzepatide trials showed an average weight loss of up to 20%, with some participants losing over 22%. And this is not marketing. That's published trial data. For a lot of guys who have tried every diet and fallen off because the hunger eventually won, this solves the hardest part of the equation: appetite. If that's you, I'm not here to talk you out of it. But here's the catch. There's a part of this story that most people never hear, and it matters more than the number on the scale. This video gives you the context to make an informed decision. If you're taking a GLP-1, there's a part of this most people don't hear about until they're already dealing with it. We're talking about side effects: nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, constipation. Most common during escalation and mostly mild to moderate, which fades over time, with only 4 to 5% of people actually coming off the drug because of it. There are some rare but serious risks also. A low percentage have gallbladder-related issues. This occurred in around 2.6% of GLP users, but we also have to compare that to the 1.2% on the placebo. And the thyroid warning. The FDA boxed warning is based around rodent studies, and there's no confirmed causal link in human studies. However, it's avoided in anyone with personal or family history of thyroid cancer. Not all weight loss is equal. Here's what almost nobody explains about GLP-1s, and it's the most important stat in this entire conversation. Up to 40% of the weight loss on a GLP-1 isn't fat, but it's muscle. And this is potentially even worse in the real world if people are not hitting their protein targets or resistance training. So what? Well, as the scale goes down, a chunk of what's disappearing is the exact tissue you actually want to keep. If you lose 10 kgs, potentially up to 40% of that could be muscle loss. Muscle predicts how you age. If you think muscle loss is just a vanity issue, this is the part you really need to hear. Muscle isn't just about how you look. It's the single strongest predictor we have of how well you age. Grip strength, lean mass, functional capacity, these track with long-term health and independence better than almost anything else we can measure. So when up to 40% of what's lost is muscle, here's what that actually means for the years ahead. Losing 10 kilos at 60, where up to 40% or 3 to 4 kilos is muscle, isn't a neutral trade. It's borrowing against your strength, your metabolism, and your mobility in the years ahead, all to hit a number on the scale this year. The part that should concern you more: what happens when you stop? Here's the part of the GLP-1 conversation that should worry you more than the muscle loss. Up to 66% of the weight loss comes back within a year of stopping. When people stop taking these drugs, the data shows roughly 2/3 of the weight they lost comes back within a year. And it's not because anyone failed. It's because the drug never actually taught them anything. It suppressed hunger. It didn't build a single habit, skill, or system underneath that hunger. So the moment the drug's gone, you're right back to exactly the same relationship with food you had before you started. Nothing's changed except the number on the scale. Temporarily. The one thing that changes the outcome: train with resistance. If you're on a GLP-1 or thinking about starting one, this is the single biggest thing you can do to change your outcome. The drug can turn your appetite down. It was never going to build your strength or teach you anything. That part still has to come from you every time. Train with resistance. Research shows this significantly shifts how much of the weight you lose is fat versus muscle, because now your body has a reason to hold on to the muscle instead of just burning it for fuel. Forget it is cheating. Everyone wants to argue about whether GLP-1s is cheating. That's the wrong question, and it always was. Are you using it as one tool inside a proper system, or using it instead of building a system at all? If it's a tool inside a system, one gets you leaner, stronger, and keeps you there long after you stop the drug. The other just delays a conversation you're going to have eventually about training, about food, about the habits that actually hold weight off for good. The drug was never the plan. It's a tool at best. Start to finish, the whole decision laid out. So let's lay out what this decision actually looks like, start to finish. You'll consult your doctor, do a history screening, and get cleared to properly start. You'll start the GLP-1. Expect some nausea and GI symptoms early, especially while the dose ramps up. You're eventually going to come to a fork in the road. And here is fork one. You're going to have to learn how to manage the side effects. Most GI symptoms are mild to moderate and fade within a couple of months. Only 4 to 5% of people stop the drug because of them. Potentially you feel too sick and you have to stop. Some people can't tolerate the nausea or the GI symptoms and discontinue before ever reaching a dose that works. The second fork in the road, the decision to train and to hit your protein intake or to lose the muscle. With protein high in training, you're going to preserve the muscle you'd otherwise lose. This is what actually determines your long-term outcome. Or you run the risk of losing too much muscle. You skip it. And up to 40% of what you lose can be muscle, the exact tissue that predicts how you age. And the final fork in the road. You've hit your goal, and now you have to decide to come off the drug or stay on it long term. With resistance training and protein already dialed in, you can counteract most of the regain. Without that system, expect the same 2/3 regain we already covered. Or you decide to stay on long term. Some guidelines treat obesity like other chronic conditions, but staying on means you need to continue to manage the ongoing side effects and the risks. And emerging evidence points to a small reduction in bone density over time also, on top of muscle loss if the training isn't part of the plan. However, every path on this tree still needs the same thing underneath it, a system. So here's where I actually land on GLP-1s after all of that. They are not cheating, and I'm not here to shame anyone who is using one. However, up to 40% of what you lose can be muscle, and 2/3 of the weight can come back after you stop the drug. However, both are fixable with resistance training, with protein, and with an actual system underneath the drug, not just the drug on its own. I've found that men don't fail because they don't know what to do, but they often fail because they don't have a system. They don't have something in place to follow, to trust. GLP-1s are a tool within a system. Use them wisely or not. Either way, you still need to educate yourself, find what works for you over time, and build a repeatable system that you can manage and maintain long term. This is what we do inside my community, Built for Men. If you want help finding what's going to work for you long term, comment system below and we'll get started.